Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we talk about the latest news, information and analysis of what's really going on in Russia and the BRICS. Now, my name is Rhod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about the International Securities Depository Euroclear, which is based in Brussels, has warned the European Commission against stealing and using Russians' assets frozen in the depository, as they would be legally held responsible as the custodian for the return of the assets once the conflict is over. Now, the freezing of the assets by the EU is legally questionable, but taking them and spending them on the Ukraine is certainly against the law and will lead to the global loss of trust in the financial system in Europe. Now, over the course of the last year, the EU authorities have transferred out of Euroclear €7 billion in interest accumulated from the frozen assets to the Kiev regime. Now, the EU is currently seeking to enhance the amount of money it can transfer to the Ukraine by allocating the Russian funds into riskier investments. Now the Euroclear Depository has issued a stark warning regarding the potential implications of this approach, which will be viewed as a form of expropriation or actual outright theft. Now, the Financial Times, which is not exactly a friend of Russia, reports that the European Central Bank's recent lowering of interest rates has resulted in a reduction in the revenues being generated, and this effect being observed across the range of assets of those held in Russia's frozen accounts. In the first half of the year, Euroclear recorded a 21% decrease in the revenue of the holdings, standing at €2.7 billion. Now, the US magazine Politico has reported that the European Commission is considering transferring those funds into riskier investment instruments that could potentially yield higher results, citing a number of European officials. Now, the Euroclear CEO Valerie Urbain has expressed her concerns that this will be interpreted as a de facto asset grab or theft. In a recent interview she gave with the Financial Times, she expressed her concerns over the EU's plans to raise additional funds for the Ukraine through the reinvestment of the frozen Russian state assets, stating that this is a clear case of the expropriation of another country's sovereign assets, and even under Belgian law it's illegal. Now, Vladimir Grigoriev, who's an associate professor at the Russian University of Economics, concurs with this assessment. He says in Euroclear, assets are placed there by their beneficial owners. The platform doesn't have the right to dispose of these funds or transfer them to third parties. Plus, investing them in so-called more lucrative but riskier financial instruments creates the prospect of their complete or partial loss, he points out. So in accordance with the prevailing formal and informal regulations, it's imperative that these frozen assets, irrespective of their nature, continue to be invested with minimal to negligible risk. Now, before I continue, I would like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and contribute to its further development. Now, you can do this by making a small donation, which can be done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen, just behind the three dots on the right hand side, or on the Buy Me a Coffee link below the credits. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now. Now, according to Sahid Gafurov, who's a lawyer specialising in financial law, he explains that the government securities of countries included in the special ratings lists, which include those of the leading European economies, are an example of this. Now, it also should be noted that the depository has already been subject to more than 100 lawsuits from Russian investors, including claims from persons who've appeared on the so-called sanctions list. Now, firstly, the financiers are also concerned about who will be held accountable before the law courts when the legal consequences occur, which they surely will once Russia has won this conflict, and it should be sooner rather than later. Now, back in late 2024, Euroclear stated it would not be held responsible for the actions of these rogue European politicians who break the law and spend Russian funds that are not entitled to use. They said we cannot allow these assets to be confiscated only for Russia to demand their return sometime later when those assets are no longer with us or even exist, according to Valerie Urbain. Now, her position is clear. The depository guarantees the safety of the funds entrusted to our custody. And should these conditions be violated, it will inevitably result in significant legal difficulties for those who ordered it to happen. Now, Euroclear has once again issued a reminder to European Commission officials. Moscow will provide a serious response regarding the reinvestment of the funds. Now, analysts also emphasise that Russia has a wide range of countermeasures at its disposal. In particular, the freezing of European assets in Russia, restricting European access to strategic resources, and the starting of legal proceedings in jurisdictions that don't recognise European sanctions. I mean, these places include Hong Kong, Beijing, or the United Arab Emirates, where Euroclear has branch offices. Analysts have stated that the situation is ambiguous for Euroclear. On the one hand, the depository performs only the technical functions of a custodian, while investment responsibility is actually assigned to the beneficial state. Now, according to Nikita Zlobin, who's CEO of A2 Invest, he stated that the financial intermediaries run the risk of compromising their reputation. Therefore, the likelihood is the depository will be held responsible for the outcome and that it won't be very happy. He said there's a possibility that Euroclear may be required to carry out the implementation of the European Commission decisions that are not in full accordance with the law. Then claims for damages and lengthy legal proceedings will then create a significant additional burden on its operational activities, according to Nadezhda Kasputina, who's a professor of economic security and risk management at the Russian Higher School of Economics. Now, the situation represents a significant setback for what is a pivotal EU financial infrastructure institution. After all, the recognition and protection of property rights is one of the cornerstones of the integrity and trust in the Western financial system. I mean, if the European Commission goes rogue and goes ahead with this asset theft, then Euroclear, Belgium and Europe will lose their status as a safe and reliable places in terms of managing and looking after foreign capital. This is then going to scare off investors, particularly those from the Middle East and China, who think they could be next if they do not go along with the sanctions on Russia and then become victims of the secondary sanctions. They will also send out a very clear signal to investors around the world that their money is not safe in Europe and can be stolen by the Europeans at any given time. Now, this is going to weaken the position of the euro, which many countries hold reserves of worth almost 2 trillion euros, according to Dmitry Izakov, who's the CEO of the platform Lender Invest. So the resulting sequence of events will be a rapid increase in the diversification away from the euro into other instruments. Central banks in developing countries are already implementing this strategy. Then the cost of financing for European countries will rise significantly. Now, as has been discussed on multiple occasions in the European Central Bank, these are direct risks to the Eurozone's overall financial stability. In fact, the euro could collapse and could bring down the whole global financial system with it, all because of the greed and Russophobia of those in Brussels. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And if you enjoy the videos and want to make a donation, buy me a coffee or click on the thanks button at the bottom right hand of the screen. And I'll see you again soon. Thank you.